We obtain energy independence by removing the stiff regulations, many of which have come through social and environmental policies that have been placed and have stifled our refinery capacity, our drilling capacity. Those need to be increased in terms for oil and natural gas. We should also look at alternative sources, but with alternative sources we have to be careful, because if an alternative source of energy has to be subsidized by the federal government, it's not viable and we don't need it. We know that we can very easily use natural gas and oil. We have plenty of it off our shores, in many of our national lands. We simply need to reduce the regulations, allow us to tap into those reserves. We have the technology to allow us to tap into those and still be environmental stewards. So we simply need to increase our production that we currently have.
In 1961, John F. Kennedy said he wanted to send a man to the moon before the end of the decade. Roughly 8.5 years later, Neil Armstrong stepped onto the surface of the moon. That was done with 1960s technology. Now we're in 2010. We have, to use the vernacular, we have tons and tons of natural resources at our disposal. We do have oil, we do have natural gas, we do have wind, we do have solar, and we do have nuclear. Why are we not using them? We're not using them and therefore achieving energy independence because of the massive regulations and oppression by the federal government through the various different agencies. The way we obtain energy independence is by drilling here, drilling now, by going after the natural gas, by going after the wind, by going after the solar, and going after the nuclear, all of it, but not without the federal government, or not with the federal government. It needs to be done only through the private sector.
The next question will go to Mickey. The Tea Party movement primarily stands for lower taxes and lower government spending. The Tea Party consists of many Republicans, as well as large numbers of conservative Democrats and independents. Why do you think these Democrats and independents have been reluctant to join the Republican Party? And do you consider yourself part of the Tea Party movement?
Absolutely, I am. Have been since April 15th of last year, when the first Tea Party started up. I've been to every single rally that I've physically been able to get to. I've been to the March on D.C. I've been to Washington a number of times. I went to the Code Red rally, drove all night to get there for one last attempt to shout, "Kill the bill," and get it killed, and they ended up voting for it anyway. I've tried my best. I've been vocal. I've screamed until my voice was hoarse, and we've been effective. And it has been slow in growing, and it's because that a lot of people held back. They were there with us in spirit, but they didn't want to get out there because they were ridiculed. They were called names. When you have the President of the United States saying, "I see you people out there with your tea bags," and calling us tea baggers, and other people calling us racists and calling us kooks and all kind of names and everything. But guess what? It's not working. Look at us. We've been influencing the most recent elections, and just the other day, Charles DeJoux in Hawaii, I was instrumental. I've been networking with them, and he's a fellow Hawaiian, and it's working. And anymore, people aren't afraid to say that they're with the Tea Parties, and even the Democrats, everybody that believes in smaller government and lower taxes are Tea Partiers.
The Tea Party movement has been a good thing because it has provided a forum for people to be able to express their views. Now, why have some of the Democrats or independents that have been a part of the Tea Party movement not join the Republican Party? I think it was very evident when I spoke with a woman earlier today, and she said this. She said, "I'm a Republican at heart, but I'm a registered Democrat because I want to have a voice in the local elections here." What we must do as a Republican Party is identify strong conservative Republicans and encourage them to run for office, and then that individual can help to recruit in a very great way people to switch to the Republican Party, the party that truly represents our conservative values. And yes, I would consider myself to be a part of the Tea Party movement.
Your very last question there, or the question at the end, was do I consider myself a Tea Partier? I will answer that question this way. About 18 to 20 years ago, I stood on the stage at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I had just received what was called the Brown Round, the drill sergeant hat. And I said the creed. I had memorized the creed. It was part of me. And part of that creed says, "But first, last, and always, I am an American soldier, sworn to defend the Constitution against all enemies, both foreign and domestic." That is who I am.
I was probably a Tea Partier before there was a term Tea Partier. I hardly ever watch TV. And the strangest thing is one day I was walking through a barber shop. Wonder why? I was getting my son's haircuts. And they had MSNBC on. First of all, I'd never watch MSNBC. And there's Rick Santelli. A tirade talking about a Tea Party in Chicago. And I thought, hey, this guy sounds a lot, like I believe. That's a great idea. This might go somewhere. And lo and behold, it did. I've had the honor, I'm sure all of you are aware of State Senator Randy Brogdon, pretty good Tea Party guy. I've got to speak after him at several Tea Parties. The most recent was on April 2nd up in Tulsa. Gun Owners of America, Larry Pratt, Randy Brogdon was up there, and I was allowed to speak as well. I spoke at about 12 Tea Parties now. And it goes back to that fundamental conservative belief that we are taxed too much and you control government through spending. One more thing. Why do they not turn to Republicans? It's two reasons. Oklahoma has some very restrictive election laws. Very restrictive. And the second is Republican Party. I will fight tooth and nail for the Republican Party and for that Republican platform. A lot of Democrats don't trust us. They do not trust the party because we have gone by the wayside many times and we were not responsible when we were supposed to be the party of conservatives. We have to fight for that. Thank you.
The next question is for you. Since the Constitution was ratified, there have been many examples where states have nullified unconstitutional federal laws. In 2005, Congress passed the Real ID Act. Oklahoma was one of 25 states that refused to enforce that law. Nullification goes all the way back to fighting for free speech in 1798 when the federal government passed the Alien and Sedition Acts. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison wrote the Kentucky and Virginia resolutions saying, "You can't do this. We're not going to abide by this in our states." Jefferson specifically said the people in our country are not united on the principle of unlimited submission to their general government. Now there is a growing movement to effectively nullify parts or all of the Obama health care bill. What is your position on states' rights and the use of nullification?
I fully support states' rights. Our Constitution set it up that we would have a very limited, restricted federal government. The further you come down the line, the greater the power, with the greatest power being in the hands of the people. We must return back to states' rights. We must put the federal government back in its proper role, which is a restricted, limited government. And I believe that if the federal government continues to pass legislation and put into law things that are unconstitutional, that the states should take them to task on it through the nullification process to nullify those laws within their states that are unconstitutional by the federal government. The federal government has a very limited role that it can play. The Constitution gives Congress 18 enumerated powers. Anything done outside of those powers is unconstitutional.